Hello and welcome to the Gleam Fishing Channel. I'm Darren Gard. I'm currently sitting in the wonderful Rutherford Hotel in Nelson at the Aquaculture New Zealand conference. So today we're very, very fortunate to have a more youthful guest than we've probably had for a while. Which is a good pleasant change. So James Sibley, so welcome to the Gleam Fishing Channel, James.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, and you might have picked up there's an accent there, so we'll unwrap that shortly. So I hear that and this is something that obviously the Gleam Fishing Channel is, we're on YouTube and all those things, and largely it's been something we've had running for about 6 months, and it's new, right? So I've been a fisherman my whole life and on boats and stuff, and now we're playing with cameras and bits and pieces to promote the seafood industry and our people and their really, really cool stories. So I understand it's largely what you do. So you're from the other side of the world, and you've got a huge social media following. I'm just looking at some figures here. Something crazy like 220 million views across various platforms, 400,000 plus followers on TikTok. You're on Instagram, LinkedIn, Meta. You've got over 800 videos published so far. And largely you are all about aquaculture, getting rid of the mistruths and largely the BS that, the misunderstandings around some of the, I guess, there's some concerns around environmental impacts and product safety and all those sorts of things. So you've been described as a fishfluencer or a fish nerd. Tell us about your social media journey and what's this fish nerd, fish influencer or fishfluencer? I'm struggling to even say it. My daughter said you should actually be a finfluencer, so you might want to take that on board, but I might have to copyright that. So
I do like that.
Yes.
I might jump on that.
So. Yeah, absolutely. You're more than welcome. So welcome, and tell us about your social media, your plan, what you're doing, and what you're doing here in NZ.
Of course, yeah. So, you started on the fishing boats and got into the tech world. I was the opposite, right? I grew up staring at phones since the day I was born. That's my generation, for better or worse. That's where the world is.
And we'll have that conversation later, young man. Yeah,
that's on my parents. No. And then in 2020 is when I really first broke into the world of seafood. I discovered this as a thing. I didn't grow up in a fishing family nor a fishing town. I grew up inland from Boston, in the States. So that's the accent you're picking up a bit.
I just thought, I thought you might be from Gore, which in the lower South Island, they roll their R's, but it's okay. So you're not from Gore, so yeah, keep going.
I am not, no. I'm not familiar. Yes, so I found interest in the seafood realm as a fishmonger, a retail fishmonger. I started at the consumer level like that, just cutting fish, selling it at a large grocer chain. And the whole internet social media world, while I was savvy with it from day one, like all of us Gen Z tend to be, it wasn't something I was actively pursuing in any way. I didn't think that it presented any real opportunity. I was definitely conditioned that stay away from things that don't have a real career name, let alone a path. A fishfluencer doesn't exactly have a 30-year, okay, this is all the way to retirement with a pension. But I had this draw from, be it the pandemic hitting, when lockdown hit and all my customers went away, but I still had to cut fish, put it out, and the isolation therein to get back out in the world, and the way I could do that was online, right? So I'm at a fish counter, not a lot of people around, so I can prop my phone up, record myself cutting fish, tapping oysters, bagging shellfish, whatever it might have been, and just talking about the product right in front of me. Not in like a sales pitch kind of way or with any agenda of any sorts, but just I'm passionate about it. I really like seafood, and at that time I didn't have that specificity in aquaculture that I do now. I'd never even seen a farm on the ocean. But, of course, when I get online and start talking about the interesting bits and bobs around seafood that consumers probably should know, right? Because I would get questions all the time of, why is that salmon a different color than this one, right? So why am I buying oysters alive? That sounds cruel or weird. It's like, no, you very much should be, and that salmon, those are different species, so, right? Things like that. It wasn't until I built up a strong enough audience over the months and years or early on there that I started to notice some trends in how people were reacting, the comments from new viewers. Once I hit around 50, 60,000 followers is when I started to notice these sorts of trends. When I would talk about wild capture seafood, it was relatively predictable, the backlash, albeit minor, that I would get, right? Mostly it was intrigue and positivity from people at large, but there's always groups, vegans, whether it be out of choice or morality, those who may have misconceptions about, destruction of the ocean. There's a lot of these sort of emotional
A lack of
narratives.
information and knowledge largely results in those sort of negative feedbacks is what I've found. But,
exactly, right. And it was the same thing in aquaculture, but I was also getting it from anglers, from people involved in government policy and environmental science. And I was a biologist by training while I was a fishmonger in university. And to me, cultivation makes sense. To me, that should go hand in hand with sort of wild capture, foraging, hunting, etc. Right? The only way we can have our cake and eat it too is if we do both at reasonable levels and don't push one over the edge. So I just found that fascinating that the very folks who I thought would be totally on board with the concept of aquaculture were vehemently against it, maybe even ideologically. And that made me double down. So I was curious. I was like, how did this happen? How do we get here?
Yeah.
What went wrong early on in this industry that led to what is clearly now a serious problem for the aquaculture sector, right? It's in regions of the world that I've been to since I really got into the aquaculture scene, like British Columbia. They have been told to get all of their farms out of the water by 2029.
Wow.
This was and all fueled by misinformation really about the effect of sea lice and how this is hurting the wild fish, right? All these issues that may have been prevalent at a minor scale 20 years ago, perhaps are really non-issues today, are just bleeding over every day. It doesn't matter that it was old news as long as it's recycled today. And seeing that happen really had me wanting to do more to help those farmers tell their stories as best I can, right? If I can be out there sort of learning along the way, that's what my selfish point of this is. I want to learn about aquaculture all around the world. But if I can help those farmers get their stories out there and then be the one who takes that risk, takes the brunt of any backlash that might be faced, and help them frame that narrative in a way that I know works online, it's a win-win for everyone.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. I mean, we get that. I guess we get that backlash from the wild captures on the wild capture fishery, and I agree with your point where we seem to be measured from our standards and behaviours of 20, 30 years ago, and people still dredge up the same old photo of the dolphin capture or the coral or those poor practices, and they apply that to today's environment and social license and think we're still doing it, and so it's really positive to hear that you're doing that for aquaculture, because it's largely what I'm sort of trying to do. But mainly, the Gleam fishing channel is about the people and their stories and career opportunities as well for wild capture. So, So what are social media? Like I said, we're doing a bit of it. It's new to me. What are some of the tips and tricks? Look, I know one thing. My kids talk about YouTubers and social media and all these. They watch a lot of stuff online, and I think just about every teenager believes that this is the way to do it. We're going to make millions. It's easy. It's great. And look, I think it's cool, but it's hard yards, eh? Like just going back to that whole social media, getting that presence to where it becomes viable. Any tips or tricks out there for the new creators like ourselves? What's some of the golden rules that have worked for you?
Yeah, if only I knew.
Fair answer.
Excuse me. So when I started doing this, it was trial and error. It still is. It really is. Now, what I do is short form videos meant for your iPhones, your Samsungs, etc. And I've done that almost exclusively up until quite recently. I'm only just now starting to get into these other spaces like YouTube with landscape video, where you can even put it up on your TV, right? So you have to film with a much higher quality. Some of the things I've learned on the short form video platforms, right, is in the attention economy we live in, where you have 7 seconds of someone's attention before they need another hit of dopamine. You need to play into the fact that it needs to be engaging, enthralling, at every single point in the video. And that can be a difficult thing to do when you're also trying to convey sometimes nuanced and niche information, right?
Well, you're the expert here, so feel free to throw in those dopamine hits for our viewers. I don't want to kill any of them, but just feel free to chuck it in there, and we'll see if we can retain their attention beyond 30 seconds. So,
yeah. Well, it's my trick with it, I guess you could call it, is we're talking about seafood. I want to show the seafood. I always want to get the farmers involved, but sometimes they're hesitant. They don't want to be on camera, whatever it might be. But if I'm out on a salmon farm, I want to pick up the biggest, best fish I can find, hold it up to the camera, and be like, look at this. Isn't this awesome? Sometimes they're like 25-kilo fish, and it takes two of us to hold it up. We're at like a broodstock facility, for instance.
Good salmon. Yeah.
That's a proper fish, yeah. So it's called the hook, right? The first 3 seconds it might be. That's how you suddenly catch somebody's attention when they're scrolling aimlessly.
Yep.
Because they could be looking at 100 videos a minute, just waiting for something to pop out at them. So you got to catch them at the pop, and then you need to continue that sort of engagement throughout the video, interspaced with all the information you're trying to get across. Ultimately, I'm not like an entertainer, right? I like to think I'm like a science communicator, just in an era where in order to do that, it needs to be, engaging. We're taking people's free time after all.
Yeah. Well, I think you said you had over 50 million hits or views last year, so whatever you're doing is definitely working. So a little bit about your background, like where do you come from? You've obviously done a fair bit of travel. I mean, you're here in New Zealand today from other parts of the world. Where do you come from originally? What got you inspired about seafood, aquaculture? And now you're the keynote speaker at the Aquaculture conference in New Zealand. I mean, that's you talk about a bit of diversity and a bit of variety. It sounds like you've got it. So what's a little bit of background on James?
Yeah, well, I mean, as you said, there's never a dull moment in like the influencer creator world. I will say that. There's hard times, but it's always interesting. So I began just out of Boston. It was in a farm town, actually. So I grew up coming through high school and the likes, working the farms in the summers. Not sea farms, right? This was fruit and veg. I was the melon guy for a while because I could like tap them. I knew when they were ripe. That was kind of my magic skill.
That. Yep.
But, I was familiar with that form of food production, right? Small scale, sort of backyard organic farming, get out in the stands and sell it later. But when I went to university in Boston, I kind of left that behind and pursued biology, microbiology and genetics as, a continuation of that. I didn't know it at the time, but like I was really interested in sort of life of this world and how humans interact with it. And I thought I'd go into like pharmaceuticals or biotech, which is a huge scene in Boston. It's kind of the hub of the research for it in the States. But during and after university, when I was doing some internships and starting to get involved in the biotech scene, I found myself just bored. I really did. As it should be, novel drugs take a long time to develop, right? You are lucky as a scientist in the biotech realm to have 1, maybe 2 drugs to your name at the end of your career. And I was sitting at my desk drinking too much coffee.
So this is for aquaculture drugs, or is it?
No, this is human beings. So yeah. I didn't actually know anything. I didn't know that like we could farm the oceans.
Yeah.
It's not a prevalent thing in the States.
Yeah.
It's mom and pop's oysters. We have a few niche areas where you can see some. Hawaii, Alaska has a bit of fish hatcheries, but it's not present in daily life. You're lucky if somebody knows that seafood or salmon, that might be from Norway, Canada. So the bar is very low in the States with a lot of things, but, with seafood knowledge, absolutely. So I didn't know anything about it. It wasn't until I picked up a job as a fishmonger, as I said, during university that I started to get involved in front of it. I only did that because, I knew farms, I needed money, and it was winter when I was looking for a job. So no farms, no money, but there was a fishmonger position open at a local grocer, so why not, right? I feel
Great start then, isn't it? I mean, that's probably a good lesson, isn't it? It doesn't matter where you start. You can, the sky's the limit, but you've got to start somewhere.
Exactly. No, and it was a fantastic place to start, and it's where I started filming too. The problem was, while a local grocer was part of a huge chain owned by Amazon, So the corporate structure was not a huge fan of the fact that one of their fishmongers was recording and posting things without their permission and the likes.
Yeah, the Ed and Comms team. Yes, I have experienced that in the corporate world as well. Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
So that was, they took me in and asked me nicely to stop. And I said, sure. And then didn't. I kept filming, kept posting videos. Then they really asked me to stop, right? It was one of those hard conversations.
That's when the letter comes, round 2. Yeah.
Yeah, it's the last warning kind of things.
Yeah.
So I made a decision there that at that point I had like 50,000 followers, give or take. I'd been making videos for 4 or 5 months, and I thought it was something, right? I thought I might be onto something. I didn't really know what. I certainly didn't think that it would be a career path that could take me around the world to sea farms, but I liked seafood. I was starting to really like aquaculture. I was researching in my own time, and I didn't want to stop. So I quit, and I then went jobless while in university. So I was racking up the bills quite quick until I found a local processor in Boston, one of Boston's longest standing processors, Fully Fish. They've been there for well over 100 years, importing fish and from all the local and domestic fisheries, processing it, sending out to restaurants and the likes. And that's where things really took off for me, because I went into that conversation, that interview, saying, look, I will work hard, right, around my class schedule and the likes, but I also want to film and post these videos. Is that okay? And they didn't really get why I wanted to do that, but I said, why not, right? Do your thing. So I did my thing. I made hundreds of videos in the course of 6 months. At that time, I was able to make content really quickly because it was low quality, but I had enthusiasm and authenticity in what I was doing.
Get the phone and GoPro out, and away you go. Yep.
Yeah, it was quick. It was run and gun, and it worked, right? And it really helped me take what was a passion and turn it into an obsession, right? I was able to dive into this rabbit hole. Suddenly, I wasn't cutting 1 or 2 salmon a day and maybe getting a tuna loan if I'm lucky. We had, 200, 300, 400 kilo tunas coming in off the boats, hundreds of salmon an hour going through the lines. And I was seeing sort of end products of aquaculture and fisheries right in front of me every day in volume. And that's when I realized, like, wow, this is, like, there's a hidden world out there on the water, and I haven't seen that. And that must be interesting.
Yeah, I agree with that point. I mean, that's largely, I think, sort of part of the driver for what we're doing here with the Gleam Fishing Channel is people don't understand the other side of the world, like as in the life at sea, the life under the sea, the life in the farms. Like there's a whole new career, a whole new way of life, a whole new environment. There's even a whole new language. There's a lot of nicknames and a lot of acronyms and a lot of jokes, and it's a lot of people in our industry, for example, particularly those that go to sea, they've got a family at sea and they've got a family at home, and I just think they're incredibly lucky because you're doubling up on life and doubling up on family a lot of the time. So it's a great place to be.
It takes a unique kind of person, right? And there's some of the best people to be around, right? After my stint in processing, I decided to try and take my channels further. I liked aquaculture, but I'd never seen a farm. All I knew was what I read and what I saw online. So I started reaching out to like the local guys, the mom and pops oysters and mussels that are, I wouldn't call it prevalent in New England, but they're around. Eventually some would let me out and I'd film there, and it would always go incredibly well because most of them had never done anything on social media. So, a couple hundred views would be great. A couple thousand was amazing. And then sometimes we'd hit 10,000, 100,000, right? And really help them grow their business, right? These are small businesses. So a little bit can go a long way. And then I wanted to keep pushing further than that. New England it's just shellfish as far as farming goes. And the States really doesn't have the farming scene, right? There's a little tiny bit in scattered places. And I visited some of those, right? I saw a shrimp farm in Indiana, 1,000 miles from the ocean. That was unique. It was in a shipping container, actually.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was like a land-based. I mean, it's one of those things that's like trialing, the tech of the future, see what we can do. Offshore farms in Hawaii. That was amazing. That was incredible. Very unique, but also very far from like its consumer base. It has to ship everything back to the mainland states. I decided I wanted to put myself in the middle of an aquaculture hub of the world. It it was a real pain working a full-time job after university and then also trying to do all of this online. I wasn't getting paid to do any of this.
Sounds very familiar, James. Yeah. Yes.
Yes, I mean, I was burning all my weekends, vacation time, PTO, a little bit of sick days, some extras in there.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. So I wanted to just put myself in the thick of it.
Yep.
And the opportunity presented itself to move to Scotland, which is the third largest producer of farm salmon in the world in a very, very small country. Not just small, but relatively concentrated.
So salmon and haggis, is that the main products?
Have you seen the haggis animal?
Scotland? No.
No, you got to get there. Yeah, these furry little things. Yeah,
Oh,
they're
okay.
real. Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm telling
right.
you. No. There's David Attenborough documentaries about it.
Yeah, I might have to Google that. I mean, trust but verify is what I've learnt. You don't get this old by being completely naive, but yeah. So Scotland, so awesome. What were you doing there? What was happening in Scotland?
Yeah, so what I had devised up to that point was, if I reach out to farmers, like individual farmers, they might let me come out to their farm. They might even pay me a little to make it happen, and then I always have agreements where I can, keep my own voice with it all. But it just helped me if I have to fly to Hawaii and back, and that's a lot. So just help me break even on what I was doing. But I was always limited by the fact that it was, one farm, one producer, and I mean, how much can I do there as one human being for a couple days? So what I devised in Scotland was, okay, take it one step back. Right? How can I get to a bunch of producers, maybe even multiple species at once? And that's when I really found out about trade organizations, trade bodies, these industry membership
Different
groups.
stakeholder groups and that, but like Aquaculture New Zealand here that you're working with today.
Exactly. And that actually stemmed from those I found in Scotland and across the North Atlantic. There were those similar groups. I worked with Salmon Scotland. They brought me over. They have 55, probably more now, member companies, including the producers, the maritime groups, supporting industry, logistics, everybody. And they basically gave me carte blanche to work with all of them, get on site on facilities for a full year. I was there, so I could just drive out to farms and processing plants and hatcheries, everything I needed. It was just in my backyard. And that, with the goal, of course, being to, Scotland is the third largest producer of farm salmon in the world. People don't really know that. And Scotland carries a really strong premium as a region, as a country, but not if people don't even know that it came from there to begin with. Right? If it's just salmon, then it's a commodity and it's cheap. But if it's Scottish salmon and you know what that means, you know what that brings with it, it's much better for the industry to have that sort of reduced volatility. So that was their benefit for having me there. And my benefit was I got to actually learn from the farmers. Right? For the first time, I was really immersed in what they were doing. I was out with them all day on the farms, and then we'd go to the pubs at night. And
that's where the real education comes in, isn't it? Really, the pubs at night. That's where the stories come, and we'll leave some of those for the after 8 version. But but you learnt.
I did. There's no better way to get to know an industry than to be screaming Loch Lomond and singing about the glens and bends out there, and that was a sort of a revelation for me that what I did out there was a trial. Everything up until that point had been a trial. I always had this fail-safe of, okay, this is fun, but what happens when I need like a real job? What should I do after that, right? That proved to me that what I was doing, while I didn't know where it would take me afterwards, it worked. It was self-sufficient, it was self-sustaining, and it was growing, right? We were growing interest. As I said, we got over 50 million views in Scotland in that year. We put Scottish salmon on the map in a way that it hadn't really been before with a new generation. And they were astounded that we could pull that off with the limited resources we had, right? It's largely me. I run around with a drone and a camera and some GoPros and make it happen. Whatever I can, I try and pull off.
It's the power of social media. I guess that's something that I'm beginning to appreciate. Even since we've done our little tiny channel, and the amount of communication and like people that ring and comments, and every one of them is positive. But we helped with a book launch recently. I just said, let's just talk about your book, and boom, a lot of they sold really, really quickly. So I'm starting to see the power of that. Of course, obviously, I'm not Gen Z or Gen A or any of those. But I'm not a baby bloomer. The kids keep calling me boomer, but I'm not quite that generation. But I can see in the modern world to push products, then you've got to use social media to engage with your generation and beyond. It's just largely a no-brainer, isn't it?
Well, it's millennials and under, right? Yeah. They use social media more than they watch TV.
Yeah.
And that difference only gets starker as you get younger and younger. And 5-10 years, those 20-year-olds are going to be a big sort of purchasing group with a lot of sway in the consumer world, and we all sort of innately understand the benefits, sometimes deficit, but the impact and the importance of television, what that meant for communications across the board, and education even at points, and that's now shifting onto our phones and onto social media, on our laptops, tablets, whatever it might be.
It's a different world. I mean, when I think back, the first television we had, and it was a Philips K9 TV, and to be watching it was colour, before your time, James. And sometimes you'd be watching it and the people would stretch. They would get wider or taller, and Dad would have to open the back of the TV and screw the valve so that the humans come back into scale. And yeah, that's how it worked back in our day. But now social media, they get everything they need off of the phones and tablets. And look, I embrace it. It's quite cool. I spend too much time on my phone as well on social media. Funnily, just looking at fishing sites and boats and fish and boats and fish and all the stories. It's just, there's something for everyone, really, isn't there?
Yeah, and it's, a lot of people will point to social media and then it's a lot of the issues that we're seeing, especially with the youth these days, and connect the dots. And There's truth there. But there's also a lot of benefit that it can and does have in points, right? So what you and I are doing, right, trying to communicate an industry that is critically important to coastal and island communities, and trying to bring that into a sort of a new light, both for them and for those around them. I think that that's a benefit, even if it's on a platform that's also filled with all sorts of garbage, right? Yeah. Same as TV is.
Definitely. Doing it for the right reasons and having a message and a desired outcome to promote people, products, well-being, safety. We do quite a bit of safety messaging on the channel as well. So doing it for the right reasons, it's absolutely valuable. So just going into a bit of aquaculture. So obviously in New Zealand, so you've been around the world, you've seen a lot of salmon farming, a lot of aquaculture. I understand you're doing a bit of a tiki tour around New Zealand to see a bit of our aquaculture. You would have heard today that there's a bit of a growth plan for aquaculture in New Zealand and particularly salmon. So there's the Blue Horizon project and the underwater farming and extensions of all of I guess our salmon rearing operations. What are your thoughts about that? Like any tips or tricks, or do you think that's a good thing for New Zealand to do, or you haven't been here long enough to have an opinion? What benefits will increased aquaculture bring to New Zealand based on your knowledge?
Yeah. I mean, one of the reasons I'm here is to explore that, see what I can learn about that. Right, New Zealand's aquaculture production is relatively small compared to some of the countries I've been working in the past. I think about the whole salmon farming industry here, I think, produces 16,000 tons a year, give or take. I've been to some farms that can produce a third of that on their own, a single farm site, right, in Norway.
We're tiny.
Yeah. So the growth potential is huge, right, because those farms, a lot of them, these large ones, do and have been and continue to operate quite well in the environments they're in. Granted, different species, different side of the world, and completely different operations, but that doesn't mean it can't be adapted to fit, your environment, and also, utilize your uniquenesses, right? King salmon, you're one of the only countries in the world that farms it. You're the only one that exclusively farms it in that way. So you have that huge advantage of differentiation there. I know, for instance, back home in Boston and the area, I've seen Ora King on the menus all over the place. That's one of the New Zealand
Kiwi
brands.
Product, yep.
And people will ask for it thinking that it's its own species of salmon, right? It's reached that level of credibility and sort of brand loyalty.
Everything's different in New Zealand, so just say yes, it is. It's specific to New Zealand, that species, yeah.
There you go.
Nod, wink, wink. It's okay.
Yeah, well, you have the potential for growth, right? Huge, enormous, vast waters and coastlines. that won't interfere with other, fishing operations, and it won't get in the way of other pieces. That's an issue I see in other countries, right? Scotland, well, they still have quite an extensive coastline. People are vying for, coastline space, and so you have more potential there in that regard.
Yep. We're actually lucky in New Zealand, and they'll hang me if I get it wrong, but I think New Zealand's got like the fifth largest economic zone in the world, like because we're an island nation, and obviously we control the water out to 200 nautical miles right around the coast of New Zealand. We've got a lot of water space, and look, there's enough for everyone, right? We did have a bit of wild capture versus aquaculture, spatial exclusion and all that competition, but largely that's ironed out now, and I think we're all in it together to grow the economy and get things steering in the right direction. What's your favourite seafood? So what do you eat seafood? And I wouldn't be horrified if you said no, because I don't eat a lot of seafood. I didn't really eat any seafood in my 25 odd years at sea.
Really?
So yeah, it's an odd one of those odd things. I eat more now that I recreationally caught than I did when I was commercially. So what's your favourite seafood?
That's interesting. I eat more seafood than probably just about any other protein.
Yeah.
Have for years. I don't know if it's because it's always in front of me. I end up in places like at the conference here. There's a lot of seafood going around, so situationally maybe. I also love it. It's delicious. It's healthy, right? I feel good about it. And the fact that I start to know some farmers better and better over the years, I'm proud to buy it off of them, right? I want to support this stuff.
Great product.
Favorite seafood, God knows, right?
Many?
I eat just about anything. I can tell you the worst, though. I was in Iceland about a decade ago, and I went up to this guy. He lived in a little shack in the southwest, and we walk out, and there's kind of a smell of ammonia kind of wafting over. He's got a little hut on the beach.
I think I know where this is going.
Yeah, and you wonder, and you're like, I came here to try shark. I wonder what this is all about, right? So he ferments Greenland shark, right? Yeah. Catches them, hangs them up, does something, I don't know what, lets them sit. They get covered in flies and the whole thing. It builds up a nice crust on the outside, and then you cut it all away, and you have fermented shark on the inside. Now, one of the things with sharks, right, is that they're a sort of prehistoric animal. They don't have the utilities that most other animals do to go to the bathroom. So they technically pee through their skin, right? So as they ferment, all of that works its way out. So the whole place just reeks. And then you take a bite, and it's the same thing. Oh, my word. No. The worst thing on earth I've ever eaten. And I think that was a pretty common experience because he just laughed at us, right, as we were eating it. So that's something I probably won't have again. Yep. Icelandic fermented Greenland shark. Maybe there's other ways to prepare Greenland shark that's better.
I think it's a bit like some products, all products, not just seafood, but you boil them for sort of several hours, put a bit of salt and pepper in the pot, and then you put a rock in the pot. So boil it, bring it to the boil it for 3 to 4 hours, and then basically throw the product away and eat the rock. So there is a lot of products out there that I'd highly recommend that's the best alternative. So quite a serious question, and this is one of you're from the other side of the world. You're now down the bottom of Earth. You're in the southern hemisphere. So thinking about salmon, so surely it's a little bit like the toilet. Do salmon swim in the opposite direction in the northern hemisphere than the southern hemisphere?
That is a serious question, isn't it?
It is.
It's the top of the debates here.
It's a tough one.
Well, here's the thing: is I've seen them swim both ways in the northern hemisphere.
So they're confused or looking for the answer or something. Then. Yeah. Okay.
I couldn't tell you either way. I will look into that now that I'm here, and I'm going to be asking the farmers.
It'll be really important because that's something we want, some uniqueness within our product. So we want to know that ours are swimming in their own unique way down in the southern hemisphere.
Well, I would hope they don't swim the same way their whole lives, right? Because then you end up with one fillet that's like pure muscle, and the other that's kind of flimsy. You get a bent fish.
Well, very similar, and we do experience that in like some of the steep land, like some of the steep terrain and farms around New Zealand. You'll see quite a lot of steep farms, and you'll see cattle and sheep, and some of those places the sheep can only walk one way around the hill, and what you find after a few years is two legs get shorter than the other. So it's one of those that sort of genetically modifies over years, and of course they can never turn and go back the other way because they fall over. So it could be a little bit like that, James. What do you reckon?
So that's the whole thing with merino wool then. You have lopsided sheep?
Correct. Yeah, absolutely. That's the secret, but they'll only ever walk one direction throughout their life. So
I was driving up through, where was I? Franz Joseph, and I was heading over to Queenstown, and I saw those sheep in like a 70 degrees.
There you go.
Yeah.
So yeah,
It
so
was
you
quite impressive.
notice they're all facing one way. They wouldn't dare turn the other way, or it'd be a disaster.
Yeah.
So welcome to New Zealand. You'll find that there's our animals and everything's a little bit different here. So what's your plan? So how long are you here for? What have you seen so far? What did you know about New Zealand before you came here, or what do you want to know about New Zealand? Like, what are your thoughts?
Right. After my time in Scotland was a fixed term piece, right? I went over there to do a mission for a year, and after that I went back out in the wild. And I was looking for, at that point I'd seen well over 100 salmon farms, and it's all Atlantic salmon, and it's basically the same concepts biologically through to the end. There's a million different ways to fry that egg, but how many other species are there out there? How many different ways to farm? What drives that in those other regions of the world? I wanted to look at something different. So I started to do a bit of, I knew that New Zealand had, I've eaten Nora King salmon before, so I knew that there were farms out here in some respects, but that's about all I knew. So I actually came out here because I know so very little. You have unique species not grown anywhere else on Earth. Your sort of split between species is quite unique. You have more, your shellfish exports exceed your salmon exports, not just in volume, but in economic value. That cannot be said about most regions, right? Finfish usually hold all the dough. So I think that's just fascinating, and I wanted to learn how that came to be, right? Who's heading up these farms around the country? Was that our 4 o'clock?
That's a bit embarrassing. That's me. That's why I never use that. That's why we haven't gone viral on social media. So sorry. Yep.
No,
so you're
good.
Fascinating.
Yeah. It's so ultimately, New Zealand to me is kind of a new frontier of education in my world. I do what I do half or in part because I get to learn about the aquaculture sector. I didn't study this. I didn't grow up with it around me. I didn't work the farms, but I want to. But I don't have that training. I'm not certified on any boats outside of New Hampshire in the United States. So I have to find another way to get out there.
Yep.
So if I join the farmers out there and kind of take my audience with it, it lets me learn about new operations I couldn't otherwise. And that's what I'm doing here in New Zealand. So after the conference here, I set up some pieces with a bunch of producers of the three major species all over the country, being Pacific oysters, greenlet mussels, and the king salmon, of course. Only in the South Island, so I'm just heading from Nelson here around Marlborough Sounds.
Yep. So you're in the main island, just to let you know. So there is, you're
in
the main island. South Island, is there another? Not sure. Yeah.
So this is to me sort of a new experience in that sense of meeting new farmers, new species, getting all around the country, and then I'm going to do my best to produce a series that does it justice. I want to intrigue the world in what New Zealand is doing. You have such ambitious targets for growth. The only way you can meet those is with the proper utilization and partnership with other countries, be it they're your customers, they're helping you build new tech, helping you scale up. So that's what I can provide. I can build that interest, that intrigue in a sort of novel way. I mean, there's a bunch of routes to go about it. This is just one of them, but it's definitely one of the most fun.
Yeah, well, it's good to have here. Watch out for those hobbit salmon as well. So they're around. They're a bit shorter than the other kings. So, thanks for coming. And any last words? So from James Sibley, the largest aquaculture social media talent in the world, is what I'm hearing. Any words for our viewers, or any last words before we wrap it up?
Yeah. What I always say to people who are interested in what I do in some regard is do it yourself, right? If you're on the water, if you work on the farms, if you're a fisherman, or you work in that our sector at all in any way, you have an opportunity to engage the public in a subject that is of critical importance, food security, that they probably know very little about, right? You can start simple. I started with different species of fish that you find at a fish counter. And it is critically important that more people do this, right? It doesn't take a lot. Your phone, some time on a lunch break to voice it over. Doesn't matter if you're wrong sometimes or if it's unprofessional. It's authenticity you're building as just a human being getting out there. And I encourage your audience and your listeners here to give it a shot, right? No harm can be done. And you might just find a hidden talent you have, might build an audience, and suddenly, you could be fishfluencing the world yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. No, they're wise words. And yeah, I think authenticity is important, and making the odd mistake like letting your alarm go on your phone and all those sorts of things through an important podcast. But hey, it shows that it's real, it's live, and we're all human. So look, I guess from, I've been in the seafood industry my whole life, and it's really refreshing to have you here. So welcome to New Zealand. If there's anything we can do to help or support you to promote our industry, then happy to do so. So have a safe journey, and thank you very much for today.
Well, thank you, Darren, and thank you for hosting me. I'm really looking forward to my, what do you call it, a tuk-tuk around, a roadie around, whatever it might be?
A roadie.
Bit
of a road trip.
Yeah.
No,
right.
Enjoy. So that's it with James Sibley. So hopefully you enjoyed that. So look, please subscribe, hit the like button, leave us a comment so that we know that this channel is important to you and we can continue to grow. So thank you very much, and catch you next time.